Okay, thanks very much. Hi everyone, my name's Alan Hiddleston from D2L. D2L is a company that provides an online learning platform called Brightspace. If you want to find out a little bit more about what we do, we are over there on the stand there, stand number 22, people waving at you. We are actually a North American company, and I have localized the presentation a little bit, but I decided to just keep this slide because it's just like the cars that we have here. Very culturally relevant. Anyway, so today's presentation, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how you can drive employee engagement using something that we call social assessment. So social assessment, a concept that we've created at D2L, and it's using technology because we are a technology company. But I think the important thing about it is oftentimes when we use technology, we tend to use a lot of the real value that people get out of learning, and that's actually the human interaction. So what we're going to talk about with social assessment is how we can actually capture that human interaction and make that more powerful by using technology. So to introduce how we think social assessment will help you boost employee engagement, we're going to pick that apart and think about how do we set the stage for that. So our magic formula is that you can get better employee engagement using social assessment, but there's a couple of key things that you need to establish first in order to achieve that employee engagement that we're all looking for. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time on those, looking at those two elements. Before I do that, I'll just explain roughly what we think social assessment is. So social assessment is a way of both peers and experts giving critical feedback to employees to help drive improvement in performance. So the first thing that we're going to look at is we're going to look at employee engagement. So we all know that everyone wants employee engagement. If you walk around this hall, it's probably the most popularly used buzzword that you'll see in all the different vendor stands, right? But the reason we want employee engagement is because people will invest more discretionary effort and they'll increase productivity when they are engaged. So we obviously want more engaged employees. If we think about some of the things that actually drive employee engagement in an organization, according to the Corporate Leadership Council, there's a couple of, these are the things that drive employee engagement, right? You may disagree, you may not disagree. You may think it's a ping pong table or a football table, whatever, that drives employee engagement. But according to the Corporate Leadership Council, these are the key elements that people rate, and this is what comes up in their surveys. A couple of the key things that we're going to focus on that we think are really impactful that relate to this topic are manager traits and learning and development opportunities. Okay? So first up, if we think about manager traits, we know that a manager can be very, very influential in terms of driving employee engagement in an organization, especially if they're good at what they do. But some of the key things that employees say that they provide that are very impactful are informal feedback. People say that they get a lot of value out of one-to-one sessions with their manager. We know this stuff, right? People enjoy getting that type of feedback because they see it as immediately context relevant to their job and can help them improve. It also just provides encouragement, right? People provide encouragement and motivation. It can help people get better at their job on a day-to-day basis. And we also know that if managers give performance feedback, it can also help the employee down the pathway to better complete their job. Okay, so managers, very, very critical element in that. Second element is professional development support. People feel very engaged in their jobs when they feel like they are on a career path, when they know what they can achieve from being in that organization. And if they are working with people in an organization who are very effective in advising them in how to progress in their career, employees feel very engaged because they feel like they have that opportunity. Okay? So what do these things have in common? Well, all of these interactions, extensive use of the F word. Now, I won't live up to my Scottish type of being stereotype of being Scottish and start swearing at this point, right? Because that would just be a cheap gag. But the F word is actually feedback. So this is the thing that these things have in common. So constructive feedback will help drive improvement in performance. It will help drive professional development. And organizations that can leverage this successfully across the board can really help to drive employee engagement. Now, to set the stage for this, there's a couple of key components that are in our magic formula for employee engagement, okay? And don't worry, because we are going to share them with you today. So the first one of those components is purpose. So people that have a strong purpose to what they're doing are very engaged in their job, okay? So one of the best examples you can think of this is Nelson Mandela, so hugely engaged in his major purpose, right? He actually, worked on his major purpose tirelessly for, almost 30 years while he was in prison. He toiled away at his job despite the barriers that were put in front of him to eventually get released in 1990 and then go on to take a role as becoming the president of his country. So he was hugely engaged, and what kept him going was his major purpose. And there's a concept that's often talked about called ikigai. It's a Japanese concept. Anyone heard of this before? No? Okay, fantastic. All right, so what ikigai means is basically it's a Japanese model, and it's a concept meaning a reason for being. So you can get scanned by Moody on our stand, and we'll give you a copy of this presentation to take away. But if someone talks about what does it mean to have a purpose, right? We know that people feel engaged in their job when they have a purpose. But we'll say, well, what does that really mean, right? And it's when a whole bunch of stuff all lines up together, right? It's a feeling that people have, so it's quite hard to define it. What's really cool about this model is it looks at things like your vocation, it looks at things like your profession, it looks at other factors like what are you passionate about, what's your personal mission, and it puts them all together, and it gives you a framework to actually look at those things and say, if I'm out of balance with one of them, then I'm maybe in a situation, that's slightly out of balance. But if I can get into the center situation where I really have a purpose and all these things are lined up, then that's where I actually have a purpose. Okay? So when Simon Sinek talks about people need to understand the why of the organization, then when you understand your why and you get into the center of everything that you're doing, that's ikigai. Okay? Or at least that's my Scottish pronunciation of it. Okay? You can go on Google and find different pronunciations. So it's really, really important. Purpose is a key element. Okay? So what's the other key element in our magic formula? So the other key element is a growth mindset. Now I'm sure quite a lot more people have heard of a growth mindset, right? So many people have heard of Carol Dweck, have heard her talks, will have read her books, fantastic. And she talks about growth mindset is where you make the change from a sort of judge and be judged culture to a learn and help type culture. So a lot of times she says that it's actually harmful to praise children for being smart, right? Because it actually takes away from the growth mindset. Children love to be praised for being talented or skilled or doing a good job, right? But what that message gives to them is it says, if you do something really well, you will get praise. But if you don't, then you won't get any praise. So a growth mindset is the opposite of that. A growth mindset says you should actually praise them for maybe not just doing things well, but for actually practicing and practicing and practicing and instilling that mindset that if you practice, you will be good. And that's the growth mindset. It's where you decide that feedback's good, failure's good, we learn and we change and we adapt, and that's the growth mindset. So our magic formula so far is employee engagement equals purpose. So you got to have the purpose, have the ikigai, you got to have the growth mindset, and then you need to use this amazing tool that we call social assessment. Okay? And if you can use that tool, then you can scale this across your organization and get engagement. So let's look at assessments. Now assessments are easy. Well, some assessments are easy, right? A lot of assessments that we have in corporate learning are fairly low stakes and they're fairly easy to check boxes and go away with quizzes, and that's fine. Okay? But are they really effective at improving performance? They're not. Not all assessments are really that easy, especially when we look at giving feedback to people. If we put people in that type of situation, we actually need to assess people in a face-to-face type situation, in a peer-to-peer situation, in an expert to a learner type situation. It's very difficult to do that because there's a human interaction. We have this model that we call social assessment, and in that, it has a mandate that someone will demonstrate a skill, They'll then incorporate feedback, and then use that to constantly improve the skill. Okay, it's coaching basically. Now with that, there's two different inputs that you can get, which we'll go and look at more in a second. So you've got experts can give feedback, which can be really useful in situations. Peers can give feedback, also useful in situations. Combine the two together in a social type of construct, and it can give the most value to the employee, to the individual. Now, feedback from peers can be hugely valuable, okay? And a lot of the times, that's how a lot of learning happens. When you sit next to people, you overhear what they're talking about, they show you things, you have a buddy, and we've kind of grown up with that type of structure, and there's no question that's valuable. But there are some problems with that as well. We're all humans. Not everybody's great at giving feedback, right? And oftentimes, if that's someone you want to work with, you don't want to be perceived as being a bit of a pain or being a bit bitchy and picking them up on stuff, or being a bit of a, being a bit too critical over people that you've got to work with for quite a long time. And not everyone's really that skilled at giving feedback as well. So it can be quite a difficult thing. So although there's value in that, it can be quite difficult. Feedback from managers, as we said earlier on, that can be amazingly powerful. But with great power comes great responsibility, and not all feedback from managers is good. In fact, a lot of feedback from managers is quite dangerous, because managers tend to be generalists, and they're not expert in an area. They can give an employee feedback, and actually that feedback could be worse than them actually getting feedback from a direct expert. And it's quite often difficult for a manager to step aside from that position of authority and say, actually, you need to talk to an expert about this, and to involve them. So again, we're going to a model more where you need to collaborate and consolidate feedback together to get maximum value. So you can give feedback face-to-face, but that doesn't always work with a dispersed workforce and this kind of global culture that we have. It's actually very rare that we're all in an office together, that we can actually get feedback from individuals in the one place. So if you can scale that across your organization to get critical feedback from managers, experts and peers, then you can really have a truly high-performing organization and have a very engaged workforce. Now, using video is one key way to do that. There's a lot of different ways that we can use video in order to scale feedback across an organization. One of the ways we can do it is through debriefs. So you can actually say to someone, okay, I want you to go and record a video on how did that sales meeting go? How did that difficult conversation go? You're a new manager, how does that difficult conversation go? Go and record your debrief about what happened there, and then get people to give feedback and comment on the video recording of that debrief, and they could timestamp it with feedback, and they can make comments about how the individual put the information across. You can also use video to capture reflections, so people could just say, yeah, I did such and such today, blah, 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 it went really well because of this, this and this. Then people could get feedback and give feedback directly onto that individual in the platform. Other things that we can also do as well is we can also do process walkthroughs. So oftentimes what we find with a process is it's not just a linear thing. Often there's lots of behaviors and processes and moving parts. We get someone to talk through a process, and then you could get people to have performance feedback on how you thought that process went, how did it go, any ways it could be improved, what do you think could be improved, where could this be improved. It's a much easier way to solicit feedback and get critical feedback on it. And lastly, you can also do role plays, right? Everyone hates doing role plays, but they can be very powerful, especially when we're trying to do behavioural change, behavioural improvement. So one of the things you can use video for in technology is you can put on your phone, you can put on your camera, you can capture the role play content into there. People don't feel as quite as silly when they're talking to their phone as they do when they're talking to another individual across there, and then they can get lots of good critical feedback from people as they progress. But feedback's really hard. People don't get coaching on how to give feedback. You actually need to get feedback on how to give feedback. So you actually need to have some type of way of scoring how good people are at giving feedback. You actually need to get to a situation where you have a model for you know what good looks like, right? You need to have some type of schema that says, this is what good looks like, and this is how you actually give feedback on that, and this is what good feedback looks like. And if you can do that, then, and you can help people to move through incremental improvement. So if you've got that type of structure set up, that's what you're trying to do with feedback, right? Is you're trying to get people to move forward with incremental feedback. You're trying to get them to move through all the failures to get to the end result of where they become a butterfly, right? So one of the ways we can do that is using something called rubrics. Now, there's a lot of people that maybe kind of grew up in the 80s like me as well that are thinking, oh yeah, I had one of them, I could do it in like under 5 minutes, but rubrics actually a structured assessment framework. And what we can do using this structured assessment framework is we can insert it for both the experts and the peers and show them a structure of what good feedback looks like and what they should be looking for there, so they can add their critical feedback and they can do it in a way that's structured. So a rubric is a structured assessment framework where you can design a rubric with all the different elements that you want to have, all the performance descriptors in there, the levels and the criteria that they should be assessing and giving feedback against, and it provides some guardrails for giving the feedback. So this helps you to get the best quality feedback from people, maximize the potential of the feedback that's been given, and it avoids using fuzzy sort of subjective comments and things as well. They can obviously be important, especially if we're talking about body language, maybe our stance or eye contact or those types of things. But this is a good way of capturing really critical feedback in the organisation. There's one very brief example of this being used for how to improve social learning behaviour. And if you come over to our stand, you can see demos of the Brightspace platform and how we use things like rubrics and other types of assessment frameworks to help assess performance. So there's a few different things to consider from today. A few different things that you should think about from this presentation. How do you use feedback in your organisation to improve performance? Is your organisation fostering the right mindset to maximise the feedback that's been given? And also, how do you help employees give better feedback? Because if you can do these things and put them together in the right context where people have a strong purpose, where they have a growth mindset, and you can foster this social assessment framework, then you can really drive increased employee engagement in your organisation. This is quite a cheesy quote, but I think it's one of the most important things about feedback is actually what you're trying to do is you are trying to bring out the uniqueness in people. People might be sort of worried and may see things as certain weaknesses, but oftentimes those characteristics and those skills that can be brought out to the surface by coaching and through feedback can be the biggest pieces of value that they can bring to an organisation. So thank you very much for listening to the presentation. If you want to find out more about this subject, you can get scanned by Moody, who's over there, this man in the green shirt, and he can send you a copy of this. We've written a number of blogs about this. We also reference the other articles that we use to source the information for this presentation and the research that we have on social assessment. And if you'd like to talk to us, please do come to our stand. My name's Alan Hiddleston, and thanks very much for listening.